function in society besides being in love. And if it goes down equally, it's not so bad because you stay connected and invest energy in other places, work and children, that kind of thing. But it tends not to go down equally. One goes down in interest and attention faster than the other.
Right, and then, of course, you introduce those lovely little beings called children, and that kind of sucks people's attention, too.
Yeah, well, statistically, marital satisfaction goes down with each child because of that diminishing attention from the couple. But they have to be able to stay connected while they're doing it. Connection's mostly an attitude. Yeah. And that you choose to feel connected and you choose to feel disconnected. What I try to get people to see is that you like yourself a lot better when you choose to feel connected. And you like yourself less when you choose to feel disconnected.
And your life goes a lot easier, too, especially if you're in a relationship.
Yeah, well, your life's going to go better when you like yourself better.
Yeah. So this is Happily Ever After is just the beginning on webtalkradio.net. I'm Leslie Dories, and I'm talking with Dr. Stephen Stosny. He's the author and founder of Compassion Power, about how to make romantic relationships work when all the old rules seem to have gone out the window. So if you're finding this to be a challenge for you, I invite you to contact me today. Give me a call or send me an email and take advantage of my free, no-obligation, Create Your Happily Ever After strategy session. You can reach me at area code 919-924-0463. Again, that's 919-924-0463. Or you can send me an email at Leslie, Lesli, at foundationscoachingnc.com. That's FOUNDATIONS. Coaching, N as in Nancy, C as in Charlie.com. Now, I want to get back to talking with Dr. Stosny and his formula. So what are the next steps in your formula for teaching each other how to love?
Well, then you make a list of what your partner can do for you to make you feel loved. And again, these are small moments of connection. And I'll tell you what I came up with for my wife. When I come home, I would like her to stop whatever she's doing and come and give me a hug, come and greet me. Because she works from home, and she can be distracted when I'm coming in. And that's not a tradition in her family. So, and she said, okay, I can do that. And I said, well, how can I make it easier for you to do that? And she says, well, when I hug you, really hold the hug. Usually you rush right by me to go to the bathroom. A middle-aged man with a prostate, I'm sure I did do that. So what I started doing was, if it was a long drive, I would stop in a public bathroom before I got home so I could really enjoy that hug.
Well, and I love the concept of this because you're creating this together. It isn't one person saying, do this, do this, do this. It's, okay, so here's my list, and now I'm going to ask you how could I make that easier for you to do? I mean, so it's like in my family, I do the grocery shopping. Always done the grocery shopping because I have this weird thing about picking my own fruits and vegetables, and But what would help me do it is when my husband and I talk about, well, what meals do we want? What do you need from the grocery store? Don't put it on the list. I mean, something that will help me do that. And then, of course, he always he thanks me every week for going to the grocery store, which makes me which makes it feel like not a chore, even though it is a chore. Yeah. So I love that concept of doing that. And do you find when you're working with your couples that, because you were talking about earlier, that sometimes we don't know what makes us feel loved, we know what makes us feel unloved? How can couples identify these smaller things as opposed to, well, you would just listen to me or you'd pay attention to me? And when I work with my clients, I say, okay, give me something that if I were sitting in your kitchen with a clipboard, I could check off, yes, that's happening. What exactly would I be seeing? Make it more concrete.
Well, if that's it, I want you to listen to me more, then I would say, or the partner would say, well, it would make it easier for me to listen to you more if you would use shorter sentences. Because usually the person who's not listening feels the other person is broadcasting, not really.
Oh, yes, and now you just headed straight into some gender differences.
Yeah, sometimes, but it's not just that the cliche of women talking more. I think women, when they talk, try to I actually study transcripts of same sets. Men talking to men and women talking to women years ago when I was in graduate school. Women talk to convey experience. You want to convey the experience of whatever you're talking about, where men tend to talk about facts.
Right, they're
so when you're trying to talk about experience, he's listening to facts. So just throw a few facts in now and then, along with the experience. You don't see that difference anymore now that people have GPS, but you used to really see it when the difference between men and women giving directions.
Yes.
A man would say, you go down to that street, turn left, and turn right, and then you're there. A woman will say, you go down to where that big oak tree hangs over the over the street, and then the purple flowers are on the left. Then you go down by the row of stores. She's conveying the experience of the drive.
Right. Yeah, my daughter doesn't know a single street name. It's like, okay, honey, you got to help me out here.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big difference. And what I train myself to do in my own marriage, and what I train men to do, is be flattered that your wife wants to share this experience with you. And when they hear that, well, sharing experience, it's not just talking at me, then they get a little more open to it. But you do have to, we got to come out of our comfort zones a little. A man has to listen to slightly longer sentences than he would like to, and the woman has to use slightly shorter sentences than she would like to.
But that's this dynamic of helping each other. Right. With what you want and need, and then moving it in, so you're creating this interaction, this reciprocity that you talked about, okay, I'm willing to shorten my sentences if you can handle a little bit longer. So we both get what we need out of that, and it makes us feel more connected.
Right. You meet in the middle, and that's really what I think connection is, because you're not going to make your partner into you, and you don't really want to.
Although people do try this. They do think that's what they want. It's like, no, really, you don't.
And my favorite metaphor for a relationship now is an instrumental duet. Both musicians can make beautiful music on their own, but together they make something better than they can on their own. Harmony. But they can't do that if the violin's trying to make the cello into a violin, or the cello is trying to make the violin into a cello. It won't work. You just make noise. So you've got to accommodate each other's differences. The biggest mistake, and that was background of developing this formula, the biggest mistake I think we make is giving our partners, or assuming that our partners are experiencing the world in exactly the same way we are, because that's almost never true.
Well, and that comes out with when couples are relating maybe a conversation that they had, and one person will say, well, you said this, and it's like, no, I didn't. Yes, you did. It's like, okay, if you don't have some recording device, you're never going to agree, because they actually experience that conversation differently.
Differently, absolutely.
But they're arguing about it. It's like, I said, because, and I tell people, what your partner says is not what you hear, and what you say is not what they hear, and as long as everybody can understand that, then we're okay. Yeah. So you also point out that learning, that mastering this formula takes time and consistency, and you suggest it takes about 6 weeks, which actually in the long run is a blip. I mean, 6 weeks in a marriage is nothing. So what is the commitment that each partner should make about the relationship and their behavior during this 6-week time period when they're working on, okay, I've got your list, you've got my list, I've told you how, what would help me give you, make you feel loved, and you've told me, what would help you make me feel loved. So
The reason it takes 6 weeks is because most interactions in a couple who lives, or anybody who lives together, become habituated. Mm-hmm. Upwards of 60% of all your interactions are habits, meaning that you respond the same way on the same physical conditions, morning, afternoon, hungry, tired, over and over again. So, and your brain wants to do habits because they consume just a fraction of the mental energy that intentional behavior does. So you're going to keep slipping back into habits unless you make a real effort in the 6 weeks to keep your list in mind, be mindful of it. Now, after about 6 weeks, that'll become your new habit. Then you won't have to really think about it anymore. The bad news is it takes 6 weeks. The good news is that's all it takes.
That's all it takes. So what have you found? I mean, there's some standard things about, why should I have to do this? It's like, okay, what's your goal? What is it that you want to have happen?
Well, you've got to break I call it the toddler brain standoff. The toddler brain standoff, if you loved me, you would do this. Or like your mother said, if he loved me, he would know what I want. Yeah. And the problem with that logically is the partner would say, if you loved me, you wouldn't ask me to do that. And that's why it doesn't get you anywhere. It's not really about love. It's about differences in perspective. So what you want to do is make it safe to love each other from different perspectives, not try to make it one perspective. Binocular vision is what I emphasize, being able to see both perspectives at the same time. If you can't really see your partner's perspective about any interaction or your relationship as a whole, don't make a judgment about it, because even if yours is absolutely right, and it never is absolutely right.
It may be right for you.
Yeah, but even if it was factually right, it's incomplete without your partners. So,
yeah, I mean, and I see how that can play out, because there's a lot of times when, and my husband said this to me once, because I really don't like it when he has very cold hands or feet and he puts them on me. I mean, it really, I do not like being cold. And so one day I put my cold hands on him, and he goes, if I did that to you, it would really annoy you. I said, yeah, but I know it doesn't bother you, so it's actually okay. But, it's one of those things where, he knew what was important to me. I knew he didn't care, and I wanted to have my hands warmed up. So, but we didn't get into this argument, and I think people do, about, well, why is that important to you? Why does that justify why you need that? And I think that's
because you have to justify it because it's not important to me. See, that's the subtext, and that's what gets you into trouble. It's got to be us, not my perspective, not your perspective, but that joint perspective. There's really three entities in the relationship. There's you, there's your partner, and there's the relationship. And the relationship's like a fruit orchard. You've got to nurture it, and it'll feed you. A lot of times I think I'm doing things not for my wife, because then I'll expect her to do something for me in return, and we'll start keeping score. I do it for a relationship, because the relationship nurtures me, and it's a better relationship if I put some effort into it.
Right, and I really love that perspective, because that's what I talk about too, is that you don't stop being an individual, you're just you plus. It's you plus the relationship, and you're wanting that relationship to be as strong and healthy as possible, which means you can't do things that are harmful to you in it, but that means that maybe you do things that you wouldn't normally do, but because it enhances the relationship.
Yeah, well, my example is going to the ballet. That's not really harmful to me, but I do it because it's good for my relationship.
Right. So this is, I always love talking about this and giving people some really concrete and practical things that they can do. And this, and making these lists, and getting really specific about, it really makes me feel loved when this happens, and here's what you can do, and I really think that gives people more of a sense of